Call to order the City Council regular meeting, City of Wyoming, Minnesota, for June 17th, 2025. Let the record reflect we do have a quorum. Member Luker, Member Onstad, Member Yeager, and Mayor Iverson are present. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item on our agenda is the open forum. The open forum is an opportunity for members of the public to address the City Council on items that are not on the current agenda. Items requiring council action may be deferred to staff or boards and commissions for research and future council agendas if appropriate. You will be limited to 3 minutes, and we ask that you conduct yourself in a professional, courteous manner and refrain from the use of profanity. Failure to abide by this policy may result in the loss of your privilege to speak. Do we have anybody here tonight that's for the open forum? Seeing none, we'll move on to the approval of minutes. Number 1, to consider approving the minutes of the work session of the Wyoming, Minnesota City Council for June 3rd, 2025. If there are no questions or comments, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve by Member Luker, a second by Member Onstad. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So approved. Number 2, consider approving the minutes of the regular meeting of the Wyoming, Minnesota City Council for June 3rd, 2025. If there are no comments or questions, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion to approve by Member Onstad. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Member Luker. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So approved. Consent agenda, items under the consent agenda will be adopted with one motion. However, council members may request individual items to be pulled from the consent agenda for discussion and action if they choose. Consent agenda number 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Does a council member wish to pull any of those items? Seeing none, we need a motion to approve consent agenda 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion by Member Onstad. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Member Luker. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So approved. Acknowledge receipts of reports of officer boards, commissions, and department heads. Number 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16. Does anybody wish to pull a report for further discussion? Seeing none, we'll move on to new business. Number 17, to consider resolution 250655, a resolution approving a variance for a front property line setback at 269 to be determined, Forest Boulevard, applicant David Boyum, property ID number 21.00164.00. Mr. Weck, will you be starting us off?
I will. Madam Mayor, council members, David Boyum is requesting a variance from the front setback for this lot here on Forest Boulevard. Setback from the county road is 135 feet from the center line, and there's a 35-foot rear yard setback. When you combine those two on this lot, they overlap, so nothing could ever be built there without a variance. So David Boyum is requesting a variance. Currently zoned R6, medium high density housing. It's intended to establish an area for attached housing units and narrow lot detached housing units, which would be the case for this property. Again, the variance is required because there's a 135-foot setback from the center line of the county road. So he's requesting approval of an 80-foot setback from the center line of Forest Boulevard to County Road 30. The graphic kind of shows the house and then those overlapping setbacks. Staff and the Planning Commission recommending approval of the variance with the 7 findings of fact that are listed there. We're not requesting any conditions of approval. So it's up to the City Council to make a determination whether to approve it.
Okay,
Can you
question?
go back a couple of slides
Sure.
to the map where the house is sited? No, not that one.
There.
Bingo. So that's the proposed house in there.
Yes.
Okay.
So it has I think it was a 1,600 square foot house with a garage. It's normal size for the area. And actually, in speaking to the applicant this morning, if the variance is approved, he'll be applying for the building permit tomorrow.
Okay.
Member Yeager, are there any other questions?
No.
Okay, thank you. Member Luker
No questions.
and Member Onstad.
No questions.
All right, I have none either. We need a motion to approve Resolution 250655, a resolution approving a variance for a front property line setback. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Member Luker. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Member Onstad. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? So approved. Number 18, to consider Resolution 250656, a resolution expressing support for the proposed use of tax increment financing for an affordable housing project by Reuter Walton Development LLC. Mr. Linwood, you'll be taking this
I
one?
will. Thank you, Mayor, members of council. I'm going to start us out. Tonight we'll be reviewing and we'll have a presentation from Michaela Hewitt from Baker Tilly regarding the two requests from both Reuter Walton and Duffy Development for one for senior housing and one for workforce housing for two developments located on the Fairview, near and on Fairview property, just across. One, the senior living one being located right next to the Meadows, and then the other one being on the northeast corner of the existing Fairview property. They do have, both have options on the land for purchase agreements. And with that, I think I will turn it over to Ms. Hewitt, and she can kind of walk the council through the request here. We do have two different agenda items and then another resolution of support from Chisago County for the Housing Trust Fund, and I can explain that when we go to that resolution.
Thank you, Rob. Good evening, mayors, member of the council. I do have a short presentation, maybe not that short, but just an overview of tax increment financing. This is a update from what was presented last year based on revised applications by both of the proposed developers. Here tonight to give you a short overview of tax increment financing, how the financing tool works, a little bit about the tax credit process, which is one of the sources of funding for both projects and why we're here today, how this relates to the type of housing that's being proposed for both projects, and what the estimated tax increment financing amounts are as the gap closer for both of these projects. So again, similar to prior year's request for support, the city has received requests for financial support from two different developers. Reuter Walton is proposing a 72-unit multifamily residential rental building, and Duffy Development is proposing a 60-unit senior housing project. Both of those projects include an application through the 2025 multifamily consolidated RFP, with the applications due July 10th. Within those applications is a request to include local support by the city through tax increment financing. Tax increment financing, as I said, is a tool that many communities use to close a financing gap related to a project. It is a method of capturing the tax-based growth that results from that new development and redirecting that captured taxes to finance certain costs related to that project that are the barrier for it commencing. So the tax increment is really the revenues that are generated by that increased property value that is created when the property is developed and the buildings are constructed. Here's just an illustration showing you've got the existing land and building value. The taxes that are generated on the existing land continue to go to the city, county, and school district. They are not captured within the district. And then once that building is constructed, the taxes are captured for the term of the tax increment district, again, to finance certain improvements. There are several different types of tax increment financing districts, and there's different criteria for which they can be established, as well as different maximum terms of collection. We are focusing tonight on the fourth one down, which is a housing district. That is not based on the current condition of the property, but what would be constructed on that site with the idea of facilitating the construction of low to moderate income housing. The maximum term is 25 years after receipt of first increment for a total maximum term of 26 years. There are certain costs that can be financed with tax increment dollars. Generally what we look at are those costs that are prior to vertical development, so it can include acquisition, site improvement, site development, any utilities or infrastructure improvements. Here's just a quick overview on how tax increment is calculated, and this follows the property tax system for generation of taxes. The illustration here is we have a taxable market value that's 13 million. You multiply that by the apartment or the classification rate for these types of, or for the proposed projects, which is the 4D apartment classification of 0.25%. So the 13 million multiplied by the 0.25% equals taxable net tax capacity of 32,500. You take that taxable net tax capacity, multiply it by the combined local tax capacity rate for all the city, county, school. That equals the net tax capacity based portion of property taxes. And using these numbers, the new taxes generated based on the local tax capacity rate would be about $35,750. When we're looking at tax increment, we use the same methodology at the top. So the total market value of 13 million, again, tax capacity that's created of 32,500, total taxes of 35,750. The current value, the original market value of 200,000, same methodology generates original net tax capacity of $500. Multiply that by the same tax capacity rate. So total taxes are $550. The increment, again, is based on the difference between the new value created and the existing value. So that increase in value is $12,800,000. The increase in the net tax capacity, or what is captured by the tax increment district to finance the improvements, is $32,000. That generates the tax increment revenues of $35,200. There are two ways that tax increment dollars can be provided to projects. One is pay-as-you-go and the other is upfront. Pay-as-you-go financing is no risk to the city, meaning that the developer is financing all of the costs upfront through other funding sources. And once the project is constructed, those TIF eligible expenses that I had on the previous slide are incurred. There is a TIF note that's issued by the city to the developer, and then the developer is reimbursed over time to the extent they pay their taxes and there's available tax increment revenues. The other method is upfront, in which the city is funding a portion of the cost and relying on the future revenues to repay the obligations, which can either be an interfund loan or issuance of bonds. For the projects that are being considered tonight, they are both pay-as-you-go developer finance projects in which the developers have requested tax increment assistance as additional cash flow to support their first mortgage construction amounts. So when we ask the impact of tax increment, again, the TIF is, the district redirects the tax dollars that are generated by that project to meet a defined public purpose. In this case, it's proposed to finance both the construction of a workforce and senior housing projects with the intent of the tax increment dollars to support the financial feasibility of both projects. The tax increment districts require the but-for finding being met, that but for the use of tax increment assistance, the project would not occur. And lastly, that once the project has been constructed, that the eligible costs have been financed, the higher tax base that was captured by the district is now included within the overall tax base of the city. So it can be considered a long-term investment of growing your tax base. Here's an illustration showing the terms of tax increment. We have the base tax value in the jade or the teal area. Again, that's the base tax values are frozen over the life of the district. They stay with the city, county, school. The incremental taxes generated by that new project is the gray shaded area. Once the district has been decertified the last year, that new lime color, that's the new tax and value that is now added to the tax base. So we're looking at definition of affordable housing. Really what we're focusing on is that households are paying no more than 30% of their income on housing. So as part of the funding sources, being the tax credits and the bonding, our limitations on the maximum amount of income or maximum incomes for qualifying tenants, as well as the maximum rents that those tenants can pay to truly provide affordable housing, meaning that they're not paying more than 30% of their incomes on their housing. So in order to qualify housing tax increment districts, there are statutory requirements. For rental projects, at least 20% of the units must be occupied by persons or families with incomes no greater than 50% of the area median income, or at least 40% of the units are occupied by persons or families at 60% of the area median income. There's also a restriction on how much of the square footage of the building can be for non-residential use. And the income limitations that require establishment of the district must apply for the duration of the district, and they generally also apply for the duration of the other funding sources provided by the state. So as I mentioned, the statutory findings to create a tax increment district, one, that it would qualify as the housing district being proposed, that the development would not reasonably be expected to occur solely through private investment within the reasonably foreseeable future. That's the but-for test. And lastly, that the TIF plan is consistent with the development needs of the city as a whole and conforms to the general plans. Again, the tax credit process, why we're here tonight, the application for the 2025 consolidated RFP. It is a competitive process to Minnesota Housing Finance Agency. The developers are preparing to submit applications by July 10. The announcement of the awards of the tax credits, which is a major source of funding, made in December. And again, the request tonight is to seek preliminary support from the city as part of the application process. There is no establishing of the tax increment districts at this point until there would be project funding awards. This is purely providing resolutions of support. So on the two projects, the first is the senior housing project. It is an approximate 60-unit building. There are a mix of studio 1 and 2 bedroom units. And the proposed income and rent limitations for the occupants of that building range between 30% and 50% of the area median income. And the average income test for all of the 60 units is 49%, with the maximum is 60%. So they are below what the minimum or the maximum amount could be. Here's the chart showing the breakdown of the different unit types. You'll see the unit type, the 0 is studios, 1 and 2 bedrooms. The number of units for each of the unit types, the monthly rents, the annual rents, and then finally the monthly gross rent. And you'll see on the far right what the rent and the income limits are for each of those different unit types. Again, ranging from 30% and 50% for the rent and the income limits, which these are the rents that are used to generate that 49% average for all 60 units. So again, tax increment can only be used where it meets the but-for test. The preliminary assistance estimate for this project is about $317,000. That is based on the maximum 26-year term of the district and the amount that the projected revenues the tax increment revenues are expected to support. So again, as a pay-as-you-go note, this would be $317,000 as principal, reimbursed with 6% interest over the maximum 26-year term of the district. And the estimated first-year annual increment amount is about $30,468. So it's roughly $30,000 plus inflationary growth over 26 years to support a $317,000 pay-as-you-go TIF note. The other project is a workforce housing project. Similar structure, however, this is geared towards more multifamilies, and so the unit mix is a little bit different with a range of 1, 2, 3, and 4 bedroom units. So you're really getting more of a mix for families with those 3 and 4 bedroom units. This one's similar structure with the income and rent limitations ranging from 30% to 60%, with the average income for all the units of 46.81%. And here's a chart showing the unit type, again, the 1, 2, 3, and 4 bedrooms, the number of units for each of that unit type, and then with the monthly gross rent, third row from the column from the right, and then the rent and the income limitations for each of the respective units. This one, based on the estimated taxable value upon completion, the preliminary assistance estimate for this one is about $356,000. Similar assumptions as to the other project. The projected annual increment is about $34,254, plus inflationary growth over the maximum 26 years would support a TIF note principal amount of $356,000 plus interest at 6%. These are preliminary estimates based on taxable values now and based on the proposed project We would expect that there could be some refinement should the projects be awarded the funding, but these would be the close to what the estimated gap amounts would be. So the tax increment assistance, again, the 100% of the tax increment is generated by that new building. The city is able to retain up to 10% for actual administrative expenses related to the tax increment districts, with the remaining 90% pledged to the developer to again support those TIF eligible costs and close the financing gap. So I believe that's the end of my formal presentation, so I'd be happy to answer any questions or turn it back.
Okay, we'll start with council. Member Luker, do you have questions regarding the presentation or the projects we're discussing?
Not at this time.
Member Ronstadt?
No questions.
Okay. Member Yeager?
I have no questions on the presentation. The only questions I have on the projects is that these are substantially the same projects that came before us last year and were not awarded housing tax credits. So what is different this time that you think you're going to get housing tax credits
Who do
with
we
the
have?
same project?
I know Jared's here. Who else? Come on,
Who's else?
yeah,
Mr.
if
Vaughn.
you guys want to come on up and just state your name, and I think that'll be the easiest, both of you together, as long as they're kind of the same question. Just introduce yourself and
I'm-
which project you're with.
Nice to see you all again. Jared Ackman, representing Ryder Walton Development on the 72 unit workforce housing project. Great question. We talked at the EDA meeting. It's more of a refinement of our application from last year. Scoring was tweaked a little bit. MHFA changes the scoring a little bit every year. We have a couple new project partners, an architect and potential general contractor, which enhance our scoring. Looked at other avenues of sustainability, some economic sustainability and like green energy stuff. So we are enhancing the building footprint, which gets us a couple extra points. So more fine tuning than anything, in hopes to, this is the year.
All right, thank you.
And Jeff Onfeld with Duffy Development. Same, no.
What he said?
What he said. So it is a competitive process. There's quite a few applications that are sent to the Housing Finance Agency every year, and about a quarter of them get selected. I would say they're on we're actually, we'll be sort of seeking different funds from each other. He's going to have a more traditional type of financing development. The senior housing requires a very particular source of funds called the housing infrastructure bonds. And those were just approved by the legislature here with the upcoming, or at the past session. So it is limited. We do as strong of an application as we can, you know, with, especially after last year, learning more about what they're looking for. And we hope this one's stronger and more competitive, and will be selected.
Any questions from there? Okay, good, thank you. I know that both of these projects are over on the Fairview Hospital side. So right next to the trail, and it's just really a good project, both of them are. So we're hoping, I think, third year, Jared? Third or fourth, something like that? Okay, and then 2 for the Duffy project, right? Okay, this will be the year, right? I don't want to jinx it, so. Okay, if there are no further questions, we need a motion to approve Resolution 250656, a resolution expressing support for the proposed use of tax increment financing for an affordable housing project by Ryder Walton Development. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
Nay.
So approved. Number 19, to consider Resolution 250657, a resolution regarding the support of a housing trust fund application in connection with Ryder Walton Development LLC. Do we need to,
I'll just give some brief background
Okay,
on this.
thank you.
This is just the Chisago County HRA EDA is also an advocate for this project and has determined to grant Ryder Walton a low interest loan of $200,000. I believe that's correct, Mr. Ackman, through the Housing Trust Fund. And As part of that application, they would, to grant that, they are asking, the HREDA is asking for just a resolution of support from the city council to show that they are supporting the project and the city is also in favor of this project. So essentially, that is what this resolution is stating. So
Okay.
that would be up to council at this point.
Any questions from council? If not, I'll make the motion to approve Resolution 250657, a resolution regarding the support of a Housing Trust Fund application in connection with Reuter Walton Development LLC. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Member Onstad. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
So approved. Let's see, number 20, to consider Resolution 250658, a resolution expressing support for the proposed use of tax increment financing for an affordable housing project by Duffy Development Company, Inc. I'll make that motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second and a third. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
So approved. Number 21, to consider Resolution 250659, a resolution approving a one-year contract with Flock Safety for the installation of 4 automatic license plate recognition cameras in the amount of $12,000. I would like council to be aware that I am going to do a roll call vote on this particular resolution. Chief Power.
Yes, Mayor Arvis and members of council. If you thought tax increment financing was fun, let's dive into this.
I don't know, it was okay.
Thanks, Grant, for pulling this up. Tonight, I'll be presenting a proposed pilot project to install automated license plate readers in key locations across the city of Wyoming. This is a public safety initiative designed to enhance investigative capabilities and also deter crime. I will be reviewing a few things that I've already reviewed in the work sessions that we've had some prior discussion, but just in the interest of transparency, I want to make sure that there's good information out there about the reality of what this proposal looks like. The technology essentially uses high-resolution cameras to capture license plate and data that's available that you see on these vehicles. So the make of the vehicle, the model, the color, any bumper stickers or other decals that might be on the vehicle. It does not use any kind of facial recognition. Its ultimate primary goal is by supporting investigations and alerting law enforcement to stolen vehicles or vehicles that are associated with felony warrants, amber alerts, silver alerts, cops alerts, which are keeping our people safe, and those type of alerts as well. They don't track or monitor traffic violations such as speeding or running red lights. They also don't track expired license plate tabs and are not used for generalized surveillance. They offer data for investigative purposes that currently is not available for us, and it helps close cases that may not have been closed in the past and allows us to use that data more effectively. Important to mention that this does not connect to driver's license database or internal records management systems that we maintain within the police department that identify any name, identity, other information about specific people unless an alert is created for a criminal investigation. When an officer does search the information that is available through Flock safety cameras, they are required to enter a search reason or a case number for auditing purposes down the road that allows us to have that audit trail that we're able to confirm that this was used for criminal investigation purposes. The agency does own the data, so we would own that data, and the data is encrypted in the cloud as well. Just a quick review of what the proposed timeline would be. Tonight, I'm asking for approval of the lease agreement. The timeline is not ideal in full transparency, okay? But I will explain why it came to the fruition this way in the interest of just understanding that there is a reason for it. Looking to do approval tonight, and then June 18th through the 27th, there'll be a community engagement period that I'll outline in, I believe, the next slide, if I remember correctly. Coming back to council on July 1st to determine if the city would continue with the lease agreement or elect to opt out based on that community input period. So the agreement that has been proposed with Flock Safety included a 30-day opt-out period that at that period of time, the next meeting, the council meeting, July 1st, we would provide that community engagement input to council. You would be presented with the option to either terminate the contract, that would be approved tonight, or continue on with that contract. Estimated timeline for installation is probably 4 to 5 months at this point. So looking at installation this fall for a 1-year trial period that I've outlined at the work sessions before. In the fall of '26, that trial period ends, and then I would return to council to determine whether or not council would choose to elect to renew that agreement or not renew that agreement with Flock Safety. If council determines that they were not going to renew the agreement at that point after the 1-year trial period, they come, pull the equipment out of the ground, load it up in a truck and take off. There's no cost to us at that point. So there's no risk for us to do that at that point. Transparency, the timeline that I was outlining, the agreement conditions from Flock Safety that it needs to be signed by June 30th of this year in order to receive a $3,800 discount on the fees associated with the installation. Went back and forth. This is not just a Wyoming thing. This was a company-wide promotion that was offered. There was no flexibility on that date. As of July 1st, we can anticipate that the costs will be increased for that $3,800. We went around and around for the last 2 weeks trying to determine how this could work to make sure that we're capitalizing on this $3,800 discount. Ultimately, that fee, that $3,800 attributes $1,250 to the DOT right-of-way locations. There were 2 of them, and there are 2 locations that are non-DOT right-of-way locations. Essentially, they have to install a different type of pole for those DOT locations. In my memo, I incorrectly had stated $4,800 was the discount. There was some discussion initially that it was about $1,200 per camera. With further clarification, it's $3,800 total. Due to the council meeting schedule, we're looking for that approval tonight. They have added in that 30-day opt-out period, giving us the time that we are looking to do community engagement, get that information from our community on what their feelings are on this. And again, on July 1st, we could opt out with a vote from council saying we no longer want to continue this contract at no risk to the city. Just to highlight a little bit of why this process came up and why we're in this time crunch. Initially, flock cameras were not allowed on DOT right away. That changed as of April 23rd. We got the notification that DOT would allow us to install these on DOT right away. Ultimately, we met with Councilmember Lugar and presented information on what the practical application of what this looks like. We met with Flock then to discuss possible locations based on this DOT information, or this allowing DOT allowing us to install on DOT right away. Met with them to look at possible locations. The following day, got that initial quote on May 9th. Worked on a draft policy to incorporate some concepts that had been discussed in prior meetings on this. We presented this to our Multicultural Advisory Committee. And then on June 3rd, information was presented to council for a work session with the desire with some ask on information from Flock, and also with the ask on doing public engagement on this process. On the 10th, met with Flock again to discuss feedback from the work sessions and possible next steps. We worked a ton last week on trying to figure out the best way forward with this due to that June 30th deadline. And last Friday, received the draft agreement, and that was sent to council on that date. These proposed locations that we're looking at are Highway 61 at 240th Street, just coming into the city of Wyoming from Forest Lake. Wyoming Trail headed westbound near Pioneer, so just west of our current police facility. East Viking Boulevard, both east and westbound near 35. So essentially, as you're entering Wyoming from both locations, this allows us essentially to capture this data at main entrance points in the city. And I'm sorry, I was wrong on the I looked at this too many times over the last week, and I lost track of what slide was where. So this is the two-pronged community engagement approach that we're looking to do. Social media would be posted tomorrow morning, essentially inviting community members to participate in an online survey. It's ready to go, it's prepped, it's ready to hit send. Online commenting, I just want to make this understood that online commenting is available, but because of the Wyoming Police Facebook page has a much larger scope than just our community. We don't have the ability to kind of curate that data based on what someone in Arkansas feels about flock safety versus our city. I don't know that data is necessarily valuable for us to consider, and staff honestly is not going to take the time to determine who from what comment is from our community, and that just isn't possible. So that will not be provided to council as feedback, but we do have this survey. It's relatively brief, takes about 3 minutes to complete, that community members can complete and give their input online. In addition, looking at hosting an open house information session on June 25th, scheduling a couple hours to do that, doing the formal presentation twice, having informational handouts available, and then having comment cards for those that like to write, or QR codes to get them to the online survey location that they could contribute. Obviously hoping that most people would opt for the online survey. Comments cards are, a little more random and gives people gives us a little better information, but they will be available for people that would like to do that as well. The online survey does allow for people to enter their email address, asking for if they do want to be contacted. I'm happy to do that if they'd like that. And there's also a text field at the end saying if there's any other questions you'd like to answer, I'm happy to do that as well.
All right, we'll start with council questions. We'll start with member Onstad.
Oh, I've got lots more.
Oh, you have more? What?
Yeah.
We're ready for it.
Perfect. Just a couple things I wanted to highlight, and I'll try and keep this brief, because it is getting hot in here, and maybe it's just me.
Well, I know you
Yeah,
are.
right? Yeah.
So.
So a couple things that I want to highlight from the agreement is that, essentially what this is highlighting is looking that in the agreement that, essentially that Flock does not own and shall not sell this data, the consumer data that is obtained. They do have some rights to the data that is available through what's captured through the cameras. And as I'm reading it, says it may be necessary for them to provide us services to the customer. So that's kind of my understanding of what that clause is, and I just wanted to highlight that. They do allow in the agreement for capturing the data and using anonymized data for improving the system. For example, when license plates came out, the black plates versus with the white lettering, the systems the reliability of the information was decreased significantly because the algorithms weren't accustomed to that type of license plate. They were used to the white plate with blue lettering. They use that data, pull in the anonymized plates, not the location information, nothing like that, use it to better their algorithm to provide more accuracy. The accuracy of the system continues to improve based on this data that's being fed into it. But again, they don't own it, they don't sell it, but that's just an understanding that that's what that data would be used for, and it's just anonymized in that fashion. So on this slide, just I want to highlight a couple things here. Excuse me, that they grant, we would be granting Flock a non-exclusive right to use the data for providing Flock services to us. So again, they repeat this over and over again, and I compared these agreements to like Axon and other systems, whether it's ProPhoenix and all these other systems. There's varying, obviously I'm not a contract attorney. That's not my expertise. No desire to do that. But as I looked at it, if you pull up Axon camera systems, they have an incredible amount of data available to them as well. Saying that they're similar, I don't want to necessarily get into that, but I think there's consistencies among these type of agreements in place. During the time period that the data is available, as I said, we're proposing for our retention period to be 30 days, which is consistent with best practice. Some departments extend it to 60 days. We're looking at 30. They would be able to release that information if it's available during that 30 days to law enforcement authorities, government officials, or third parties if legally required to do so. So that would be that they were served with a court order, whether it's a subpoena or a search warrant, or if they have good faith belief that it would be essentially to comply with the legal process, enforce the agreement, detect or prevent or otherwise address security, privacy, fraud, or technical issues, emergency situations. And I'll get to more clarification on that. Just bear with me here. These are the highlighted. When we ask clarification, these are the reasons why they may provide that data in a limited scope to comply with legal request, enforce the agreement, including investigating violations, detect or prevent or address security, fraud, technical issues, and then finally protect the rights, property, or safety of flock its users, a third party of the public as required or permitted by law, including responding to an emergency situation. They provide a significant clarification on that as well. I'm not going to read all this. We've covered it in a work session as well. If there's more questions on it, we can come back to this. But I want to provide this. This was their response after the work session. We had asked for further clarification on when they may consider releasing it. This I will read. It's worth pointing out it's an extremely limited clause. They can only do this when the footage is still available within legally contractually allowed retention window. So that 30-day period of time that we have the data available to us, they would be able to provide it to law enforcement, government officials, and third parties when it's legally required and when it's for one of the enumerated reasons, such as exigent circumstances, and I'll define that in a moment here. Disclosure to law enforcement is conditioned on legal requirements or urgent, high-stakes situations, not casual or volunteer sharing. Again, it's only during that retention period, and it either must be legally compelled through court order, or they have a good faith, reasonable belief tied to very specific categories. So there's security, fraud, emergencies. You can see what that is. No language allowing flock to disclose footage for marketing, analysis, or profit. And a few examples are high-stakes kidnappings or active shooters. That type of situation is when they have released this type of data, when there's not time to allow their general practice, or their practice is if they get a request for data, they would forward it to the owner of that data. So if they get a request for Wyoming PD's data, they would forward that to us. We have that retention period of 30 days. We review it. If we decide that we do not want to comply with that for whatever reason, whatever that basis is, I'll call Mr. Lunan and say, hey, buddy, we don't agree with this. This doesn't comply with our policy, or we don't agree with why we would release this. We would then determine whether or not we want to fight that legally. They may ask us to retain that data, in that court order for a longer period of time. We'd have to figure that out, how we could do that or not. But essentially, we have that 30-day window. If they submit that request after that 30 days, what we don't have, we don't have. It's gone. So that is built into the system as well. Exigent circumstances, just the definition of what this might look like. Circumstances that reasonable person believes that entry. So violation of the Fourth Amendment, essentially, is what that says, is that, in understanding the Fourth Amendment is police just can't enter your house. So equivalent is that I can't just enter your vehicle for no reason. I have no probable cause to do that. There essentially needs to be, to access this data, it would be necessary to prevent physical harm to others, officers or other persons, the destruction of evidence, escape of the suspect, which possibly could apply in a situation like this weekend, or some other consequences improperly frustrating legitimate law enforcement efforts. So that's the legal definition of what exigent circumstances are, just to give you a better scope of this. I provided a draft policy in a work session. It talks about access control and what we would be looking at. The policy is consistent with other agencies in law enforcement in partnership with Lexipol, our policy provider. We have some time to craft that policy prior to installation. If we're looking at this fall for installation, we do have a significant amount of time to work through that. And I would, I think I'd get to it later, but essentially, I would bring that policy for approval, much like we did with the body-worn camera policy, because I think there's a similar type of perception with body-worn cameras. Those also have, invasive nature to them, but we want to make sure that council's on board with that type of policy. Annual lease for 4 cameras is $12,000. That's all inclusive. They pay for everything. The only thing we would need to pay for is the audit, and those are about $2,000, consistent with what we pay for body-worn camera audits as well. Paying for this with public safety aid funding the first year. If we decide to renew, we likely have costs to do another 2-year contract at that point at the end of 26 with public safety aid money, again, not having any impact on the levy if we decide to renew the contract. Looking to do a 1-year pilot program, providing quarterly updates to council on how things are going, any other feedback that we received. Talked about that already. Again, this is a fully funded project with public safety aid money that is available, and ultimately looking for agreement to sign an agreement for 4 ALPR cameras with a 30-day opt-out clause. Looking for any questions that council may have?
Are we sure this time?
That's it.
Okay.
I actually do have a lot more slides
You did it.
afterwards, just in case.
You did a good job.
I feel like that's enough.
All right, sounds good. I'm going to start with my 2 very easy questions. I think you answered one of them. Do we know if this was possibly used in the incident that happened over the weekend?
Yeah, I reached out to all the chiefs on the Chiefs Association because we were in direct contact with the investigation, even though I was not directly involved. And Stillwater had used it for kind of one step away from the investigation, looking at, there was family members that had possibly been looking for this, or had been harboring the individual. They had a hit on that, and also used it as for follow-up on a possible sighting of the vehicle as well in Stillwater, that they saw a similar type of vehicle that was being reported, and they were able to confirm that it was not it, but it's on flock data as well.
Okay, and I do believe I read a story maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago of a city, there was a car stolen with a child in it, and they used this data for that. So I wish I
Sure.
could remember what city. But my other question would be, again, very simple. You referenced the Multicultural Advisory Committee, and you presented the same data, I'm assuming?
A brief version of it, yes. Yep,
Okay, and
correct.
what was their thoughts on this?
The only question that I did get on it was whether or not it would impact their taxes, was one of the questions, which is a fair question.
Good question.
And, it's covered in that regard, but with the explanation, and honestly, I've had significant discussions with them as well on immigration and how things are changing along those lines, and we talked about that, and so I did discuss all that with them, yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. That's all my questions. We'll start with Member Yeager.
Okay. If these cameras were reprogrammed, could they also pick up traffic enforcement or be used for surveillance? If you reprogram the cameras?
If
The cameras
No, I
have a
understand the
program
question. Correct.
to read license plates. If you were to reprogram them, can they be reprogrammed to do facial recognition and traffic enforcement and surveillance?
I understand the question. Do I have the capability of doing that? No. Are you asking if someone?
Can Flock reprogram them? Do the cameras have the capability of being reprogrammed?
It's a standard camera. There's nothing specific about the camera.
There is a computer program behind that
Correct.
camera that's collecting all that data. Can that program be changed to include?
Sure, it could be changed for anything, but that's not what our agreement is, and that's not the intent. And that's
Okay.
not the purpose.
And then, according to the staff memo, the price of the cameras increased to $16,800 after July 1st, correct?
As I said, I had an error. It would be 1,500, or
Oh,
15,800.
15,800.
15,800, yes.
I
Okay.
said one comment. I think it's important to note that the flock cameras do not have any current technology for facial recognition as they
Right, I
exist
mean,
right now.
it's a camera that somebody could
Right.
program whatever
They don't have
they
any
wanted
ability
to,
for
but I don't.
facial recognition, so I don't know how you'd reprogram it, because unless it was a different camera. The existing cameras don't have any ability for facial recognition.
Okay. Good to know. All right, so then, when it comes time to start taking this out of the budget, assuming your program is successful, how much more is this camera going to cost? We're not going to get it for $12,000 a year.
That's correct.
How?
But the expected cost would be, if we did it this year, would be the 15,800, but that's the with installation. I don't know what it will be next year. Chisago County signed a 3-year contract that locked in the $12,000 or the $3,000 per camera. That was, my sense was not the desire that there would be, we'd be looking at a 1-year pilot project with the city. We do have the option, I don't know that I could get that accomplished by tomorrow, but to sign a 3-year contract that would lock in pricing. But that's, I can't predict what the cost would be at that point. And in another year, I would bring that to council, and that would be council's determination whether or not they would fund that project at that point.
So Chisago County is also using flock cameras?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right. I do have a couple of concerns with this. The one is on the conditions under which flock can disclose the data. Some of their conditions I'm uncomfortable with. And even if they disclose the data under limited circumstances or whatever they defined as reasonably necessary, they're still gathering the data. I'm uncomfortable with the price increase. And I really don't like, being presented with a contract to sign that I better sign it now before the price goes up in 2 weeks.
I think there's, I'm not sure if you're understanding, the price increase only has to do with the installation. It's a company-wide promotion they're offering that right now, it's the same as any other product or company that offers a discount. If you purchase prior to this date, you get this discount, and you would receive that discount, and that's what we're trying to capitalize on.
Right. And I also, we talked about having a public forum. I think the public forum should come before making this vote. I mean, my biggest concern, I don't care for Big Brother watching me. I don't care to have cameras all over. We start with 4 cameras, but as I asked at the work session, you can, if the program is a success, we could get more cameras. And that doesn't work for me.
Okay.
If I want to, there are other cities I could live in if I want to be on camera all the time. So,
I will say that Forest Lake currently has 17 cameras. If you go to the BCA website and you type in ALPR, they do track what cities. I removed that just in the sense of interest of time. But if you have time later this evening, you'd like to look at what cities this is available, they do track it. We do our mandated report to them when we do have the ALPR technology in place. And you could take a look and see what those cities might be.
okay, might do that. So yeah, I do have some concerns about this.
Okay. Member Onstead.
Just real quickly, you said something about the cameras being optimized after they had the black license plates that they're having a hard time. How is that with like other states that have similar, dissimilar? Has it been optimized for all states, or is it kind of just Minnesota plates?
Nope, it's a nationwide project. And I will say, just to clarify that, when the officer does receive a hit, that a confirmation comes back that this is a stolen vehicle, it's an Amber Alert, whatever that might be. Most importantly, if it's a warrant or something like that, or something like that, we'll go down the criminal nature of this. So if it's a stolen vehicle, that hit comes back, the officer receives a image on their screen when they query it with a close-up of the plate. They do not take action on anything based on that information alone. They look at it, they confirm, yes, this is a match for what that plate is. Is this actually an H? And somebody had a plate cover around it that it actually now looks like an 8. So they confirm that, whether through their technology, in their squad, or through dispatch, they confirm that that is still listed as a stolen vehicle, because the data updates, I believe, if I remember correctly, every 6 hours. I'd have to double check that, but there's data that comes from the state or NCIC hits on how often that data gets published. So technically, if that vehicle was stolen yesterday, it gets entered as a stolen vehicle. A flock hit says, hey, a stolen vehicle is over at East Viking and 35. The officer gets that hit, they get that confirmation, they look at it and say, oh, nope, that's actually not the plate. They're not gonna take action. Or they look and say, yes, that is the plate. They run it through their computer, it still shows up stolen. We also verbally, hey, can you confirm with Anoka County that this vehicle is stolen? That's practice we do all the time. So even if it is misreading, we have things in place that would confirm that this is actually the correct license plate and that it still is in effect before we would take action. What that does is help prevent, arresting the wrong person, calling someone out on a high-risk stop where we're taking those extra precautions. We want to make sure that that we have the right information before we're taking action.
Yeah, and then you just mentioned NCIS. Could you say what that is? I know what it is, but
Yeah,
just so
NCIC,
that.
it's a database that essentially when a vehicle, a firearm, anything is stolen or a person's missing, all that information gets entered in through the BCA and it goes into a nationwide database that is accessible to law enforcement.
And that's what the camera is triggering off of that database so that it can reference?
It's connected to NCIC, yes.
Okay. And then you mentioned some of the surrounding cities. I was just saying you have Forest Lake. I didn't know Chisago
Anoka County has them currently in place.
North Branch, I believe.
North Branch is looking into it.
Okay.
Rush City just purchased 8 for their city.
Okay.
Getting down to the metro area, like I said, there's an extensive list of where these are in place already.
And the only other question Mayor Iverson asked was
Stole your
about.
thunder. Yep, she
was-
stole your
yep,
thunder.
Yep, she did. About how the recent events.
Yeah, that's the only one I
used
know
it.
of I
Yeah.
had a group of about 14 chiefs that I had asked,
Yeah.
but yes,
But that's a big one.
Mhm.
It's in recent history, so.
right.
That's all the questions I have.
Thank you. Member Luker.
I have a couple questions. Shocking
I
turn of
figured,
events.
yeah.
Cities are expected to do annual audits, right, of
I
their,
believe it's biannual, but
Biannual,
yes,
okay.
similar to the body-worn cameras, yes.
and that's conducted by
A
an
third party,
independent, a third
yes.
party. Who would that third party be? Do we know?
There are, MinSec is a group that I've had to contract with to do our CGIS audit preps, to prepare us for the technology changes for, that's a whole different pathway, but yes, that's a company that does it. The current company that does our body-worn camera audits does it. There's another one. They
Okay.
provide a list. Yeah,
Okay.
there's several.
There's a really extensively outlined feedback process in terms of community input. How are we reaching folks? How are we, in that short, it seems like a short window.
Sure,
How are we reaching folks who maybe don't follow the city online?
sure.
Right, because like quarterly, like typically we'd put information in like the quarterly, like newsletter.
Yeah, right.
Right? We don't have that option here.
True. Again, it's not ideal. I wish we had more time to do it. It's balancing how can we maximize our social media reach and an opportunity to get this information out in a quick period of time to maximize our financial responsibility as well. I have a hard time paying $3,800 more dollars if we have this ability to do this in a 30-day period. That was the balance that Mr. Lidwin and I really worked through the last couple weeks was, can we make this work in a way that allows us to get community input and have council relook at it based on that in a relatively short period of time. Not ideal. I'll give you that. Absolutely.
Thank you. I appreciate the presentation, and I know, Chief, you've done just a ton of legwork answering my questions and meeting with me about my concerns about this. So I'm going to preface my comments by clarifying that I have no doubt in my mind about the integrity with which Wyoming PD would use this in like an investigative capacity.
Sure.
We have top-notch public safety. I also don't doubt that ALPR cameras can be used for solving crimes. One of my concerns, and I know I've talked about this in the work session and in conversations, is Flock's own privacy policy and under what circumstances Flock will access that city information. I'm having a really hard time getting past Flock's, the consistent we hear it, we don't own your data, we don't own your data, we don't own your data. And yet, here's the privacy policy that tells us the legal reasons as well as the non-legal reasons that we're gonna access your data, if need be. And I understand that, and you've obviously put in a lot of legwork too on clarifying that in the slides. There's some language there to me that just seems to open that door despite what FLOC says. And I don't know that FLOC itself would say, well, we're gonna abuse your data. You know what I mean? Like, FLOC's
There's
reviewing
no
themselves.
interest in doing that, yes, right.
In addition to the privacy concerns, one thing that I really would like to see is independent reviews of FLOC's products. In the hours of reading I've done, I have yet to see a whole lot of reviews by different, just different companies, different, I guess, agencies besides FLOC praising FLOC, right? Like, if we look at like what the efficacy, if I just Google like what is the efficacy of it, it's a lot of FLOC saying how awesome it is, which different departments might concur with. It just would be nice to have like some independent body that has, this is what FLOC is, this is what FLOC does, here are the concerns, here are the pros, et cetera. When that question was passed along to FLOC, their answer, as presented to council during the work session, was that the independent review company I suggested wasn't really independent, which to me isn't really an answer, right? Like, I would like to have that independent review. So those are my concerns with FLOC itself. In this not being an ideal time frame, my other concern is the lack of clarity around that 30-day opt-out, and kind of it sounds like the process we would use is we put it to the public, we get the data, and then council has a conversation, and we decide whether or not we want to continue on. And so, to me, it seems to send a message that we've already made this decision, and maybe we'll consider and I have no doubt that this council would. It's the optics of it for me. It doesn't seem transparent, and I feel like we as a city staff as well as council have worked really hard at really drilling down on transparency. And I in my heart of hearts believe that we are more transparent now than we ever have been, and that's due to everybody's efforts. I'm concerned that this will diminish trust with the public. Even with those informational open houses schedules, putting it to a vote before that sends a message that I'm not comfortable with. And I don't know how we reach everybody, right? We are reaching the people, and I get it, like within this time frame, you can't mail stuff out, right? That would make it cost effective. But those are folks who still might weigh in, right? Who might still have a really strong opinion. So that's my big concern on this time frame. I'm also curious, as long as we're like voting on this, kind of what the final policy would be, right? Because we know that things in our, like we had the draft policy presented. Yep. And policies differ from city to city, right? Like I know, like the state statute says that it can be 60 days or less that we retain the data. Some states or some cities do 30 days, which seems to be fairly common in Minnesota. Other places in the country do it for far shorter timeframes. It would be nice to know the rules by which Wyoming is going to be using FLOC before we actually vote on it. And so, I think, like and again, I'll reiterate, like I appreciate all the time and effort that is taken to answer my questions and talk with me about my concerns. I ultimately can't support this until the community has a better understanding of what it actually is and how it actually works, and has the information in front of them, and B, has a chance to weigh in on it. Because I think understanding all of, for me, it's a transparency thing, and I would prefer that it go to the community before it comes for a vote.
Sure, understood.
I'm gonna just kind of make a statement on this. First of all, I always appreciate our council and our staff for getting in front of us and then getting in front of our community and allowing us to answer or ask questions. I think to Councilmember Lugar's point, we are very transparent. I would say my only concern is this. We've held open houses on various different things, right? Whether it would be road projects, to pick something. And I think go to Planning Commission is probably the biggest one that's top of mind. We put a lot of energy and time into putting out information to the public, a lot of time and a lot of energy. And there's still people who are coming in saying they never got it. And I can take the newsletter and show it. We can do all that kind of stuff, right? So open houses are great, but it's only as good as the people that are engaged in those open houses. I will also state the fact that every single device in my house and in my car and on my phone and whatever device is following me wherever I go. I mean, the other day I was having a conversation with my daughter and up popped an advertisement for what we were talking about. Very creepy, actually. But it's just something to prove that we're being, even when we don't know it, if it's on a device, it's on a satellite. We're always being monitored to where we're at. So, and I totally understand where you're coming from. So I get that. I have, over the last 8.5 years, almost 9 years, learned that I am always about the safety of the majority of people in our city. And if we do not, let's say we do not go forward with this, however the vote goes, we have a family that a car is stolen, a child is lost, a senior citizen is in their car, they have dementia, they get lost. I want to be able to have a way to be able to help find that person. That's safety. To me, that's safety of our community. So that, I'm looking at it overall. I also know that this is 30 days. So I get that it feels kind of icky, that it's, you know, we're going to do this to save money, which we're always trying to be good stewards of that. And we can terminate that in 30 days, right? That's what you're saying. So we have 30 more days. Chief Bauer, do you think that if this does go through, you would be able to come up with a policy in 30 days? Because it's pretty much like the same as the body camera, correct? Is that what you were mentioning?
I have a draft. It would be whether or not, is our next council meeting on the 15th? Today is the 17th.
Would be
Right,
kinda
but
tight
we'd
to
have,
do.
I'm just saying within 30 days.
Yeah.
I have a draft.
Yeah.
It would be whether or not council would like to, if you have feedback on it,
Yeah,
whether there's time to do that. But, I mean, if, I have it ready to go.
Yeah.
You've seen it. It's
Yeah.
a matter of if there's changes you'd like to see, if there's specific things regarding, you know, immigration enforcement in there. And that's a whole different
Yeah.
conversation I could get into. But, you know, if there's things that you'd like to see in there, I could make that happen. It would, you know, I would have it ready for you the next council meeting.
okay. Mr. Lunan, can we have a special session if we need to? Call a special meeting if we needed to come? I'm trying to meet in the middle is really what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, council could certainly call a special meeting if it deemed it necessary. You have the authority as mayor, 2 council members could call the meeting. So at any point with proper notice, we can call a special meeting. That's no problem.
Okay, thank you. All right, so that's my statement on all of this. I'm just all about safety when it comes right down to it. So I am going to call roll call vote on this. Number 21, are there any other questions? I know this is a big issue. All right, to consider resolution 250659, a resolution approving a 1-year contract with Flock Safety for the installation of 4 automated license plate recognition cameras in the amount of $12,000. Member Onstead, your vote.
Aye.
Member Luger.
Nay.
Member Yeager.
Nay.
Mayor Iverson is a yes. So what that means is that this will not go forward in terms of buying the cameras at the cost of or the discounted rate of $3,800, which will cost our taxpayers. Right? Okay. So that does that. All right, council reports. We will start with council reports with Member Onstad because you have a couple to report, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So I attended the last night's joint sewer and water commission meeting, and the budget work session prior to this meeting.
Okay.
I think that's it.
I think that's it, but you came to joint sewer. That was
Yeah,
fun.
that was fun.
Okay, sounds good. Member Yeager.
Oh, I went to touch a truck and I went to the work session before this meeting.
Perfect. All right.
And thank you all for coming and thank you all for watching.
All right, Member Luker.
I attended the work session prior to this meeting. Thanks for coming.
Perfect. I also attended the work session, the Touch a Truck, the Planning Commission, and the Joint Sewer Commission as well. So it was kind of a busy couple of weeks. I am going to call on Mr. McFarland because he's got a few updates on things coming up.
Yeah, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. Some exciting news on Fireside Park is that it formally or officially opened this last Friday, June 13th. To commemorate the opening of that new park, we are going to be holding a ribbon cutting ceremony this Wednesday, June 18th at 5 out at Fireside. So all members of the public are welcome. The Park Advisory Commissioner has been invited as well as our City Council, so we'd love to see you out there.
Okay, will that be on our new digital sign?
It currently is, yep.
Fabulous. All right, that sounds great. Anything else coming up? We do have Night to Unite. Again, I just want to stress that, which is August
August 5th.
3rd?
Yep,
5th?
first Tuesday of August, yep. That's the
Okay.
A1, yep, yeah.
Perfect. There's so many
I
dates
know.
coming up in August that I have to kind of remember that. All right. I would also at this time wish to express our thoughts and prayers are with the Hortman family on the loss of Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband Mark. Our thoughts and prayers are with her children and also with her parents and friends. Also would like to offer up prayers for quick and speedy recovery, which I know it's going to be a long time for Senator Hoffman and his wife as well. I would like to thank all the officers, all the police force that was involved in helping apprehend this person. So again, just our thoughts and prayers are with everybody. The city has worked with Melissa Hortman and also with Senator Hoffman many times over the last 3 years. And they have always been more than kind and generous with their time to speak with us about our city needs. So with that, I would like to thank everybody for being here tonight, and we need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a motion to adjourn. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?